Hey, good morning, traders, and welcome to the morning Jumpstart Macro View for Trade the Structure. So I'm just going to get into it now. Of using the TD365 charts today. I thought I'd use those instead, just so I can keep everything online. What we're going to go through is just overnight markets for the US, what happened, the key markets we're looking at, and what I sort of expect to happen, where I see some potential trade setups or some key levels to work off anyway. So what we'll start with, this is the Asx session from yesterday. So that's the open to the close. This is on the actual futures from 9:50 till 4 p.m. You can see it pushed up. So it was sort of in no man's land at the start. It started to find a bit of a base, had an extension up into a resistance zone, flushed that out, and then basically failed off that into the close. Not really failed too much, but yeah, it did find a bit of selling. It sort of come back to close to where it started the session. So not a big session. Don't forget, we got US payrolls out tomorrow night in the US, and that's a big number. So they had an initial number out last night, ADP non-farm, but that's just a new number. They're just trying to steal the thunder from the payrolls, really. But payrolls are the big one that have been around for years and years. So the ADP number came out a lot worse than expected. So that sort of spooked the market a bit. Bond yields have ticked down a bit. But previously they've been out of whack, way out of whack, when the real number comes out on the following Friday. So people have not taken as much notice of it, but still the US market actually opened up because of those numbers. Obviously it's taking pressure off rate rises if their jobs are gone, dropping quite a bit. New jobs are dropping quite a bit. So it's something that they're obviously looking at, and the market could be, I wouldn't expect it to get too out of hand prior to that number. So we'll look at the ASX 200. That to me, yeah, obviously one or two things can happen, but it's at a resistance zone through here. Okay, it did sort of fail and then push up into the close, finally push up into the close, but it was heavy for most of the session, the overnight session, and that's the close at 4 p.m. So we had Europe and then into the US session. It didn't do a hell of a lot. That was a bit of a buoy. Once the US opened, it got buoyed a bit and started to find some support. Now, sometimes I see this kind of action. I'm kind of looking at that action there a bit more bullish than anything else for today, but purely because I like to see when it's capped like that, you tend to think it's getting capped all night. So when it opens, the ASX doesn't open out of hand and they can ramp it up during the day. Okay, that's just a theory, but I've seen that happen before. It's not a very good night considering what happened in the US, and then bang, up we go in the ASX session. Now you got to remember, if it's very, very strong, if it's up about 50 points from here, the ASX is going to match that on the open. People get the opening prices rather than having to buy it a bit lower. Your algos driven it, funds, all that sort of stuff. Someone's trying to build a bigger position. So it's not a bad thing that it was capped a bit overnight, considering the US was up, but still it's at a resistance zone. Now, if this was in no man's land and it was kind of that action between support and a resistance, different story. So it could easily, you don't want to say, but it could easily just sort of drop into these lows and retest down to here at 70.50 or so. So just watch it on the open, see what happens. If we start to look a bit heavy and get a lower high, I'll be shorting into that. But I don't really want to see, I want to see a key lower high below the MAs, basically. Okay, look onto the Dow. Dow basically pushed up from that 35,323. We're on a 30-minute chart. So just remember, you can see the what time frames we're on. If I haven't marked it up on the actual chart, you can see it bounced into a key resistance zone. Okay, from here. So that's a key resistance zone. It's support became resistance. It's tested it here. It hasn't really tested it prior before that sell-off or since that sell-off. So it went straight through, had a little minor test here, went straight down. So it's the first time we're sort of back up there again. If it's going to be negative, I would expect a flush up and then a lower high to come in. Okay, if it's going to be positive, you expect more of an extension up, a pullback to retest it, and then you're working off that high low. So that's what I'm looking for. Really, I'd be biased. I don't really know, to be honest. I think the payrolls, because of the ADP number comes out prior, it finds a few bulls coming out and a bit of excitement because they're expecting that jobs haven't grown as much, pressure off interest rate rises, they'll be buying. Okay, but because it's notoriously been out of whack quite a lot, I wouldn't expect that to get out of hand. So I expect more, maybe a flush, bit of a chop around this level, 35,670 up until Friday. So that's tonight's session, and then that's basically tonight's session. I don't expect too much of that action prior to the so the numbers come out at 12:30 just before the US opens. All right, let's get on to the big S&P. Now, this is a tech. US Tech, got the wrong one. So that to me, uptrend channel broken. What do we expect from here? Do we expect some more chop and expect maybe a bit of a chop in here, retest the highs? We don't know, but I do think that trend up has been broken. Okay, it's just where to, and this is the daily chart, so we'll put it down to a 30-minute now. Just want to show you that daily prior. And that's the longer term trend up. So this has kind of been the action since it's broken down, come back up, retested. We get a lower high in play here. But that lower high doesn't mean too much because this is sort of the anchor to the uptrend. All right. So the anchor to the uptrend is not broken. It doesn't mean that's going to be a lower high that's going to take the market down. It's more needs to break the anchor, then you get a lower high. So if we do start to get something like this, whoops, then yeah, I'll be a bit more bearish on that, and I'll be trying to work off a lower high like that, break the anchor, bounce back up, drags in some bulls, sucks them in, traps them, and then drops. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, I think it's got to do with what happens on the payrolls. The big S&P, obviously driven by the market. And just as a reminder, I'm pretty sure everyone saw that, or may not have seen that. Facebook come out with aftermarket earnings, and the market took a bit of a hit in aftermarket, especially on the CFD prices. You're not seeing it on the futures just yet because they're closed, but you'll see it on the CFD prices. If we get over to here, it took a bit of a hit. Oh, that's not actually on it. So anyway, just be wary that it could cap the open on the ASX too, and actually into Europe as well. So the S&P, big S&P, if we just get onto some levels, it's pretty much a key level through here. Whether that's going to continue to hold, I don't know, but it did. You can see how it's kind of looking okay, backed off, reversed in, and got smacked down. And that sell-off was just after market. So that's the sell-off I was just talking about. You'll probably see it on the Dow. That sell-off there was just because of the Facebook earnings coming out after market. So you see, I would be interested to see whether it can break down from here. Excuse me, a bit of a rough voice there. But if you can start to break down through that anchor and start to roll over in a lower high, that could really put the pressure on. And it looks like there is the potential that this, if that's your trend up there, we've kind of broken that too. It's probably not as clean there, but you can see what I mean. Okay, so that maybe this is a resistance zone we're going to be concerned about. I think that's going to hold into that resistance. It's going to be all about the number on Friday. So we might find it's a bit of chop, a bit of weighed down by the Facebook earnings coming into the US session tonight, maybe weighed down the US session tonight because everyone will be waiting for that payroll number. Now, if the payroll number comes out strong, it's probably trapped a lot of bulls from overnight last night that have bought it up because of the ADP number. That makes sense. So weak ADP drove the market up from the open. If it comes out and that's completely wrong and the payroll shows some strong figures, then there's going to be a lot of exits from people being buying yesterday, and maybe it's enough to squeeze that market down. DAX was kind of heavy into its close. Now it did close obviously before the US, but it saw the US open, so the DAX closed around the 3 a.m. mark, which is here. So that's where it closed. The US was actually up then, so it's interesting. They've come back and down to a support around that 15,560. This zone through here, it's come back into that support. So if that's going to start to roll, and you can see back here, it's sort of faded through here, these levels. Okay. So if that's the case, and it's getting a bit heavy from here, I thought it might have failed about here, but it's back into that area where it broke down from originally. If it starts to fade from here, we'll be looking for a lower high on that as well. And you can see that there's a lot of buying that have been dragging this market up. So you can see the way it grinds its way up, pullback, supported, new high, higher low, new high, higher low, new high, and so on. Okay, now there's a lot of buyers up here that could easily get squeezed out if that market starts to roll over. But for now, I think, again, it's going to be a bit capped. And don't forget, you've got in Europe tonight, you've got a lot of numbers. You've got ECB, BOE, Bank of England, and European Central Bank are both talking about interest rates. I think the BOE are going to release theirs. So it could be a very choppy session. Now, talking about that, over to the Ftse, you can see that's, I don't like this price action too much. It was looking okay up until obviously the earnings gave it a bit of a knock on the head. And it's come straight back down in the support zone. Now, that could just be a flush, like a good old-fashioned flush, but we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen there. You can see also I like the way it sort of got up through the highs, this high, took out this high. It chopped around, didn't really do too much, and banged down. So it's kind of, it looks like it's quick to react to the downside. So there's a bit of nervousness around. Okay, so just be wary of that. If you're going to be diving in left, right, and center on the long side, be wary that the market is nervous about interest rates. Bitcoin, we get over to a couple of those. Well, I shot this out in the morning trading plan. If you did see that, talking up a sell, and I did put it in our Discord channel, and it has pressured down. So it was down from about 37.4, so it's down about $500 since I alerted to that. So it's worth keeping an eye on that. I think this trend up is broken. Okay, it's looking to flush. Whether that's going to flush lower and continue to start to really drive lower, and that, if you take the bigger time frame, leg down, contraction back up, we're looking for a potential leg down. So it could easily get down into that support through here, okay, which is down to 33, 32. Okay, so just keep an eye on that. That's one to watch. If we look at Ethereum, if anyone that's trading your cryptos, that's had a bit of a flush lower as well. It's whether it can hold this as a lower high, chop around, and then bang. Okay, Aussie dollar. So the US dollar, I haven't got that on the charts here, but the US dollar was down, so it continued to edge lower, which found that the currencies found a bit of support from that. So they're a bit messy at the moment. You can see that's from previously. It's a bit of a bounce. I'll look at head and shoulders, but whether this is, I'm not very good at it, to be honest. A big head, another shoulder forming, or what's going to happen there, which could really start to drive down. If that's the case, you'd be looking to, I think that's kind of a neckline in a way. It could really drive down through there. It could just break that, come down to this zone around 71.10, and then bounce straight back up. I mean, all in all, it's got to do with what happens in the US tonight. On Friday night, on the numbers. So I'll be looking at the Aussie. Actually, looking at that Aussie there, I'll be looking for more. This is a bit of a shoulder. You've got the momentum. It's below the MAs. That's your leg up. It's starting to squeeze these buys up, squeeze them out. So I'll be looking for a short on that, actually. I think it's actually doesn't look too bad. So I think that's a good one to keep an eye on. You got this failure here, flush that level. It's not a key level up here, but it's just picking, into this zone as well. So it's been reacting off that zone, flushed it through, retested and failed. So we're back up there again. It's failed again, retested back into that level, failed. So if anyone that's been buying up here expecting an attack on the highs, or a lot bigger move higher, it could be disappointed. So that's why I'm looking at this as a bit of a shoulder. Okay, pound. Pound here is a bit choppy. I wouldn't be touching that ahead of BOE, because what they'll try to do is just flush people in and out of the market. Okay, but you look like a prime setup on the short. You get in and it turns around and chases you back out again on the way up. Okay, so just be wary of that. They've got BOE out tonight, but if you're going to look at that, that's sort of your key levels. And we're only on a 5-minute chart. Let's go to a 30-minute chart. That was your 5-minute chart on the Aussie, by the way. I forgot about that. So you've got, it's had a good strong move up. All right, okay, we're starting to find. So just be wary if you're thinking about long and it gets up through this level. That's your breakout trade. Be wary. I'm more than, I wouldn't be saying 100%, but I'll be positive that they'll try to flush them out before the BOE, push up here and then fail. Okay, so just be wary if they're talking up interest rate rises in England, then you would expect some strength in that. Now there has been a lot of strength in that lately. Okay, so just be wary. Look at the euro. I'll get over the 30-minute charts. Don't worry about those. There you go. So that's the euro. Euro is finding obviously some buying. We've spoken about this a few days. Finding some buying for that weak US dollar. Now it's back up into this clear zone through here. So whether it can continue there, I would expect some chop. Like I said, it's whether it can continue the uptrend is a different story. This could be a lower high, and it could be, a measured move down. So that's your move, that's your pop. You get a measured move down into this area before we pop again, and then start to do this. But then, like I said, the US dollar's been hit pretty hard. They'll be watching, and it's just a bit of a flush on longs. It could be prepping some shorts. Prepping some shorts, I mean by dragging in some shorts into the US dollar before the number, payroll comes out good, bang, US dollar comes up, it's got some ammunition to squeeze higher, okay, which would mean that the euro is going to squeeze lower. So this may not be a scenario, but it could be, you know, a bit of a scenario. Pop back up here into the Friday, then bang, down we go. Yen, we're looking at this for a short, and it played out quite nicely off this zone. That's the one I alerted to, or notified on Discord and a few other areas that we trade into. But that was a good short, okay, because of the weakness into the US dollar. And it was testing into this zone, so it was a good area to, it was trading up about here when we alerted, so it's a good area just to watch, and you've got some shoulders, you know, more than enough on the downside. It's really played out. Now, whether that's extended because of the US dollar, it's back into an area down here. You know, whether it continues or not is a different story. We'll just draw up some lines there. Major support through here. But if I'm right with the US dollar, and it is starting to trap some traders, that's enough of, you know, some short setup that can easily squeeze them back out. It's just where from, potentially. There could be a zone through here if it starts to hold. If we start to, you know, pop off here type of thing, then look for a higher low to work off. But we'll see. Now quickly we get through gold. That was in the other report as well. It's faded, so it broke up into 1810 and then faded. So it was, you can see when the US opens, it's just a lot of, like I said, it's the quants, the algo traders that wake up and turn their computers on. You get this chop. They start fluffing around in the market and just squeezing both sides of the market, trapping traders. So you can see, look, it's pushed down, gets up to here, starts to push down, traps some shorts, bang, up we go, squeezes the stops out. So that's enough to push up into that 1807 and start to work through 1807 before it fades again. So you've got breakout traders now that are trapped, okay, and then squeezes those out. So it is choppy gold at the moment. I'm not sitting on the fact that, okay, we're talking up inflation, gold's an inflation hedge, buy into gold. It just has not worked. Okay, it's been bought up. Those inflationary hedge buyers will jump in, then it gets squeezed out and it gets smacked back down like it has back down, you know, to 17 or so recently, down to these lows. Okay, so that's only the 5-minute chart, but I'm looking for more of this action today. But see if this level can hold 1807. We can have a deeper squeeze on some of these buyers through here and squeeze back down to 17.99. Oil. This is the 30-minute chart. So oil's essentially been going sideways. It's been chopping around. I don't know if inventories were last night, which come out worse than expected, meaning, you know, it's a less supply, which would be supportive of crude. It's probably why you got this bounce, and it was around about this time, 2 o'clock in the morning, I think, where the market bounced. So that's just from inventories. But essentially, it's been held between that 90, 91 area and 88, 89. Okay, support zone. So for me, I'm expecting more chop. I do expect potentially for a bit of a push higher, but you know, it is a manipulated market. Oil, they can cut off production, they can squeeze off production. Supplies cut off supply and increase that demand, not really increase demand, but drive that market higher by just completely cutting off one side of that equation. Okay, last thing, copper. Copper's been fairly choppy because of the US dollar finding some weakness, but we were talking about this yesterday off that zone, and it did bounce off there, okay, quite nicely. So that was the action. There was a nice little higher low that played out through the session. That was late Asian session, early start to the yesterday. Yep, early start to the European markets, and we had a drive higher, flush straight back down, straight back up again. So really choppy session, all in all. This could be the makings of a lower high or a zone where you get another lower high to work into. But we'll see. There's some massive support through here, which we spoke about before, 95, and then further down is even bigger support through 93, or 93.50 or so. So it'll be interesting to see. I do think this kind of longer term action, if we get over to a daily, it's pretty good. You know, had a good uptrend. Big pullback, was looking to flush some of these buyers, but it's been holding. So it held through here. You can see this zone through here, held up there, expansion higher, flush, holding a higher low. So I do think longer term it could be creeping up. So just keep an eye on copper. Anyway, we'll stop it there. It's been 20 minutes. Thank you very much for joining me. And just remember, if you don't know about Trade the Structure, check out the website. It's www.tradethestructure.com. Join in our group there, and there's a lot of free information if you're new to it, A lot of free information that you can look at in regards to trading will help you along your journey with trading. There's a good community we're trying to build. So joining our community, that's always going to help with your trading, especially if you're new. There's a couple of good strategies to work from that you can learn. Just email me and I'll shoot those off. Obviously, there's a few things you've got to do to qualify, but yeah, generally there's a lot of free information on that, which is quite handy, and it's going to be growing. So I'll be building a course into that too. Obviously, a video course, just in the way I trade and what I'm looking for, with regards mainly to price action. So thank you very much for joining me. We'll be back on tomorrow, and just remember, if you like what you see, leave us a like and give us a thumbs up. Cheers, guys. Speak to you soon.